Hi there, great you could join us today for a reflection. Just want to ask you a question. How do you look at others? Indeed, how do others look at you? In other words, how do they view you? And what conclusions can you reach even by just looking at someone? But imagine if someone comes to a conclusion about you and they've not even set an eye on who you are as a person. I suppose people in application forms, it's exactly that. All they see is words, maybe a photograph, very rarely these days, but all of that is going on. I read a powerful book called The Salty Path. It was about a couple in their 50s who had hard times and they'd lost everything they'd ever had over those years. They even lost their imagined future together because the husband was diagnosed with a very rare terminal illness. Now, they had lived in Wales, and instead of just waiting around to actually get their house, they basically used the little benefits that they had and started walking the southwest coastal path, not knowing how far they would ever get, knowing what the husband's illness was like. And they were at their lowest and they needed hope. So they went on this walk and they bought what they could from charity shops and started walking what's a very popular, well-worn path, but it's only a few who walk the whole way, while others just maybe dip in and dip out. They enjoy their Cornish cream teas, while they, when they sat down, had boiled water and a tea bag. Now, the conversations of inquisitive tourists soon faltered after a few sentences in the words that they used to describe who they were, because they had to admit, well, actually, we're homeless. They were judged differently as a result of that. And so, for no reason other than be known to themselves, they decided to adjust their story just so they could just develop their journey uninterrupted and not misunderstood. But it helped them to see how others saw homelessness. Sometimes even that term gives us maybe preconceived ideas that are not deserving. It could be about any term, but all of it speaks of judgment. Something that Jesus actually was not exempt from either in his life here on earth. Sometimes knowing that Jesus experienced that too can give us some measure of comfort that he understands the pain and hurt that can cause. All the more reason to turn to him for such a time like that. In the Gospel of John, our reading that we find Philip, who is asked to follow and then immediately to share his news with Nathanael. Now, after declaring to Nathanael that he'd found the one that Moses and the prophets wrote of, Philip was probably expecting a bit of a more complimentary reply. But then Nathanael basically says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? See, behind that sarcasm, there is a disturbing prejudice, a judgment call without knowledge of the person, but only based on where they're from. Maybe we've experienced such prejudice. What's happened to you? But what's so annoying is that it's just an incomplete picture about a person that we haven't known. And they have come up and drawn their own conclusions about us. That's dangerous and degrading attitude. And I wonder maybe if we've ever slipped into that way of thinking too. So it's time maybe for a change and to start anew as a result of that. So one way to address such prejudice is to put it to the test. And no better way than to see for ourselves rather than be left guessing. It's the same for Jesus in allowing the stories to speak to us. It can be a bit of a shock. Philip responds in our story today to Nathanael by saying, come and see. Now Nathanael does come to see Jesus, and much to his surprise, he's not only seen by Jesus, but he's known by Jesus. What a contrast. Nathanael saying nothing makes a judgment, and Jesus seeing everything is accepting. This is the wonderful mystery of discovering Jesus and for him to be part of our life. He knows us and loves us for who we are and what we can become in him. This is something we need during the experience of lockdown and that kind of disconnection throughout 2020 caused by COVID-19. And many of us have experienced forms of isolation when separated from our family members and when working at distance, away from our colleagues and family support. We cannot just feel unknown, but we could also feel distant and have a sense that we've even been forgotten. So Nathaniel's question, how do you know me, is particularly poignant in these times of separation and isolation. This experience is in stark contrast to the initial prejudice response of Nathaniel. So in this brief encounter, we see a movement away from assumption and preconceived notions of someone's value, dependent where they come from, to Nathaniel feeling, this guy actually knows me and accepts me. It has a powerful impact on Nathaniel, that he sees Jesus for who he really is, and Nathaniel then declares, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. He's completely opened up to this guy, Jesus. And then Jesus shares more with Nathaniel, that he will see heaven and open up and angels of God ascending and descending. And I think Nathaniel will get that image because it would remind him of Jacob's dream at Bethel, a place of discovery, a place of promise, where he recognised that surely God is in this place. And likewise it points towards recognising Jesus who connects heaven and earth. And you see, Jesus as a person brings us to a place of discovery. When we start to accept Jesus and get past the prejudice or preconceived ideas about him, we can soon discover that Jesus has accepted us. And that can empower us to learn how to accept others, so that we don't just engage with the relationship with Jesus, but the relationships that we look at through Jesus' eyes begin to change. And we begin to see the relationship that Jesus and Nathaniel have can be a better way to discover about what life is actually all about. It's something that we need to do as God's people. We need to get past that preconceived idea about another person and give each other a chance, and then together appreciate the life and world that we can create together. And we realise in this past year that that is very precious. So it's been known as a group where we show mercy and understand grace. Maybe there are some in our church we should try to get to know better when these restrictions lessen. Maybe we should be picking up the phone and taking time just to spend and chat, even with family, instead of being distant. But maybe even now, we just need to prepare our hearts, be ready for when those restrictions, yes, they will end, and we can discover how Jesus can help us to be more accepting of others, be more merciful and more understanding, be more gracious in the way that we speak, the way we respond, the way we understand and accept another person. So here's the invitation that Philip said, come and see. It's an invitation we need, and by accepting that journey, we will discover so much about the power of God's acceptance of who we are. Thanks for taking the time just to listen to that short thought, but one I hope has a lasting measure. Every blessing.